I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. I film one of these every week, so most of you will be very familiar with what goes on. This is my reading week from the 26th of August until the 2nd of September, need to remember my dates, and it did include the kids reading vlog, which ultimately I didn't end up including all of the stats in this video, mostly because it's going to be long enough as it is. But if you would like to see the things that I did read over the weekend, I will leave that linked on the screen. For the purposes of this video, I read 7 adult titles that equated to 1,867 pages, and my yearly reading total is 413 books. I did complete my reread of the Necessary Evil series by Onley James, so these were the physical books that I owned. I have reread them and the newest book, Lunatic, which I desperately would like a physical copy of. Book 4 in the series is Headcase. This is Asa Mulvaney's story. So Asa is one of a set of twins that were adopted by Thomas Mulvaney. They are both psychopaths, and they are mirror twins, so they're mirror images of each other, and they behave as such. And lots of people in the series comment that they have their own way of communicating that doesn't include anyone else, and that they are the perfect half that the other person is missing. And one of the things that's really interesting in the next 2 books, because they're Asa and Avi's books, is that Asa is a sadist and Avi is a masochist, and that's explored in their relationships with their respective partners. So in the story, Asa ends up coming across a man named Zane, who is a amateur crime blogger, and he got into it because his older brother committed suicide, and he's also done a little bit of digging into Thomas Mulvaney, who he doesn't believe is as squeaky clean as he appears on paper. And when the opportunity arises for him to cross paths with one of the Mulvaneys, he ends up taking it and flirts with Asa at the bar. Asa then takes him home. There is some primal kink in here. Also, this one has a lot of blood involved in it and knives and things like that, so be aware of that going into it. Anyway, the two end up being forced to work together when a string of suicides on campus are believed to be linked, and the Mulvaneys decide to investigate. I really like the twins books, and I'll talk about Madman in a minute. They're such interesting characters and the way that they respond to things, and I think that's the interesting thing about the series, because so far we've had 6 psychopaths, but every one of them responds in different ways, and I like that it shows a spectrum of that. But I think this one did have a level of tension that some of the others didn't for me, just because I enjoyed the characters more, maybe. Huge content warnings in here for suicidal ideation, and lots of violence and things linked towards that. There's also some pretty horrific imagery and some things that are being done to people off page, so be aware of that going into it. Madman is book 5. This is Avi's story. So Avi is the twin of Asa, and he is a fashion designer, and for months he has delighted in toying with Felix, who is the younger brother of Atticus Mulvaney's partner. So we've met him before, and in Atticus's book, Felix got an internship working for Avi's design company, and Avi is just enamored by Felix, and he loves to poke him and to get a reaction, because that's just his instinct. And he's described a couple of times as a giant psychopathic Labrador. He's kind of the opposite of his brother, who is very intense and overbearing. Like, Avi can be overbearing, but he's just happy, and he doesn't take things too seriously, and he knows that he wants Felix, and so he pursues him, and he orchestrates the opportunity for them to basically be forced together while helping out Aiden, one of the other brothers, and staying in his cabin with only one bed. And he is just delighted that he has all of this one-on-one time with Felix. It shouldn't be as endearing as it is, but it was totally endearing. Anyway, the Mulvaneys are investigating a series of murders that are occurring that appear to be linked, with very prominent people being arrested for committing crimes that are caught on tape, but they have no recollection of committing them. And it all comes back down to a sexual assault that occurred off-page historically in the past, and someone is out for revenge. And I really enjoyed this one. We got to spend plenty of time with Avi and Felix, but we also got to spend time with Aiden, who is probably the character I'm most eagerly anticipating his book. Like, I desperately want that. That's going to be the last book. But I really enjoy this because we got a few glimpses into characters that we haven't spent a huge amount of time with. I don't feel like I'm very coherent today, so I apologize in advance. Then I did read Lunatic when it came out. So this is the 6th book. It is Archer Mulvaney's book. Archer is the family drunk. And all through the series, every time we meet him, he appears to be fully drunk, barely functional, and he is the gambler in the family. But what we quickly discover in this book is that that is all a lie, and that he has been faking being a drunk with his family because it's the public persona that he shows for the jobs that he does for Thomas. Being a professional gambler and appearing to not be able to control his alcohol consumption allows him to do things that he couldn't normally do, and it's just sort of bled into his personal life because it was easier just to continue and maintain it than to tell the truth. Which I think is such an interesting concept, and it does cause some friction between him and Noah, who is Adam's partner from the first book, because Noah is very much an empath and is very taken aback when Archer, someone he thought that he was relatively close to, has been lying to him the entire time that he's known him. So in this one, we have Archer, who is in a relationship with Mac Shepherd. So this is a crossover with the Elite Protection series. Mac is the twin brother of Jane from that series. And Jane is a sociopath. In the Necessary Evil series, we've always heard that Thomas is involved in a project of raising psychopaths based on the research of his friend who raised a sociopath, and that friend is Mac's mother. This book is really about expanding the universe of the Necessary Evil series, because suddenly Thomas's experiment is now being taken to a next level. So he's raised these psychopaths, they're functional in society, and they're looking to take that research and make it something that they can harness with other people. Archer and Mac are put in charge of it. And what we learn at the start of the book is that every time Mac and Archer end up in the same space, they end up having sex and then going their own ways. And it's just a purely physical thing, except Mac wants more. And Archer doesn't know anything except fighting that attraction. They are put in charge of this project. They are basically in charge of managing the handlers and the young adult psychopaths that are being trained to basically be government sanctioned assassins. But all of this is complicated because Mac, who is a photographer by trade normally, witnessed something on camera, and now there are people who have put out a hit on him because they don't want what he saw to get out. That is how he ends up working with the Mulvaneys to track down exactly what's going on, who is behind it, and what truly happened. Content warning in this book for people trafficking, child trafficking and child sexual assault. Be aware of all of that going into it. When I said that I like the twins books were my favorite books in the series so far, Lunatic surpassed that so much, and this book made me teary, and it should not have done that because of the type of book it is, but it totally did, because both Archer and Mac are misunderstood in their families and are treated as such. Mac in particular, because he is not a psychopath or a sociopath, and he grew up with a mother who was deeply invested in ensuring that his twin brother didn't become a menace to society. And so the level of attention and focus on him in his family was very unbalanced. He also has a sister, and there's a comment in there that the father looked after the daughter, his mother looked after Jane, and Mac was sort of left to fend for himself. And the scenes where all of that comes out, you just feel so much for some of these characters. So yes, I am so excited for Maniac, which is the last book. It is Aidan and Thomas's book. The setup is done at the end of Lunatic, and I can't believe I have to wait till January. I will be doing a reread of Lunatic when the physical copy becomes available. It's not currently available for me to purchase yet, so I will be doing that, and I will be rereading and annotating it because I had the best time reading it. It was the highlight of my week. I also got an early art copy of Their Vicious Darling by Nikki St. Crow. I got this through her Patreon. This is the third book in the Vicious Lost Boys series, and at this point in the story, which is kind of hard to talk about because we're 3 books in, Peter Pan has got his shadow back, and Winnie has inadvertently been forced to take on Neverland's death shadow, and so this complicates things when Vane's older brother Crocodile comes to Neverland with some of the Darkland royal family who are intent on getting Vane's death shadow back. The thing that I loved most about this book is we finally learn what exactly Vane and Crocodile are, because they are a kind of monster, and it was very fascinating and a little disturbing, to be perfectly honest. There is going to be another book in the series which I think focuses more on the Fae side of this world, which should be really interesting. Jessica Gadziala also brought out a new book. It's called Primal. It's a novella-length paranormal shifter romance story. This one is about Maribel, who inherits a cabin in the woods from her grandmother, and she spent a lot of time there as a child, and her grandmother always made sure she didn't wander too far into the woods. What she doesn't know is that in this same woods live a pack of wolf shifters who have dwindling numbers because they've been struggling to find their fated mates, or the equivalent of their fated mates. I forget the term that Jessica Gadziala used. And we have Waylon, who ends up coming across Maribel in the woods at night and automatically senses a connection. He is in wolf form, and he kind of chases her through the woods, and then she ends up tripping over and he transforms back into a man. They have a moment, and then she thinks she's hallucinated the entire thing, and then he meets her again as a human during the daytime, and he lets her think that she had hallucinated the whole thing, and she is very put out when she realizes that perhaps it wasn't all totally weird random dream and that wolves might be real. It was super short and really fun and just very, very entertaining. I'm interested to see what Jessica Gadziala does with this world, because I'm assuming that there will be a few other books featuring some of the characters, and it was honestly just delightful. Then I read Bad Saint by Monica James. This is the first book in the All the Pretty Things series, and I read this because Monica James is an Australian romance author. I am possibly going to be meeting her at Books Insight Melbourne in October, and I'm trying to read through a few more of those authors so that, you know, I have a sense of what they write. This book does end on a cliffhanger, so be aware of that going into it. I suspected that it did. I wasn't 100% sure when I went into it, but I'd owned this for years, so I figured I might as well read it. It is a dark romance. It is captor-captive. So you have Willow, who is kidnapped on her honeymoon by men who work for a Russian mobster, and she has been sold in a poker game to settle a debt. And Saint, who is an American man who works for this mobster, is charged with bringing her to him. She spends a lot of time as a prisoner on a yacht, and she constantly tries to fight back and to escape. There is a lot of assault on page, both sexual and not. This is a book that I have very conflicted feelings on, and I'm not entirely convinced I'm going to continue the series, mostly just because I don't think this type of story is for me. I don't mind dark romance, but I think I have to have certain conditions met. By the end of the first book, I think we understand Saint a little bit more. I don't think that happened early enough for the dynamic to feel comfortable yet. That may happen later in the series, and that's totally fine. I may or may not continue. Yeah, it's an interesting book. They both end up shipwrecked on an island where they're basically stuck together with only themselves to depend on. And that was the part where I felt we started to get a slightly better shift in their relationship. But yeah, like it's an interesting one. I honestly don't really know how I feel about it yet. Then finally I read Wolf by Anna Hackett. This is the first book in the Sentinel Security series. This is the next series that follows on from the Norcross series, and I realized that again both series are tied into the Team 52 series, which I haven't read, so we'll probably go back and read that at some point as well. So we met Nick, the hero, or Wolf, which is his code name, in the last book in the Norcross series. He is the 2IC of Sentinel Security, and he has been attracted to his younger sister's best friend for years. He's known her since she was 12. He's only 6 years older, so they were both teens when they first met. Yeah, he's had this crush on her for ages. They had one brief interaction where they kissed when she was 18 and he was on leave from the Navy, and he realized that it was not okay. They were in different points in their life, that he thought he didn't really have anything to offer her, and so he left and they never really talked about it again. Many years later, she is the very successful CEO of a tech company, and she's receiving very violent death threats. And when Nick hears about it, he gets really upset by this. He hears about it from his sister, and he decides to intervene and to help Lainey out. He is very alpha, very overbearing, but she's also very capable of putting up with that and putting him back in his place. So it didn't feel too much like a power imbalance for me. It was fun because there was an element of fake dating in here. They're both trying to deny their attraction to one another, that they don't, and there's lots of action and things that happen. Now that I know what Anna Hackett's contemporary romantic suspense style is like this is just going back to an old favorite, and I'm very intrigued by the rest of the series. I know Hades' book is next. He's a former Interpol member of Sentinel Security, so I'm very, very excited to read that when it comes out, hopefully soon. I should check the release date for it. But yes, those are the books that I read this week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of these books, or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Alternatively, feel free to leave a wolf emoji down below. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.